And welcome to Justice Served TV. Michael Bryant here. Good to have you along. Linda Kenny Baden is still on assignment. We know that she's tied up in the Eden Carney extravaganza. I don't know what the hell's going on in Atlantic City. I'm not sure they know what's going on. We will get into that at the more appropriate time. But I have a great guest for you today. Jeffrey Epstein, name ring a bell. That case continues to bubble and is now almost like, did you see Kilauea, the volcano in Hawaii? It's blowing up. That may be where we're going with this case. And I have a guest coming up here that will bring us up to speed. She has been inside this thing from the beginning, knows everything about it, and is going to share with us right now.
Justice, where are you? Michael and Linda are here.
Love you, Linda.
Where is justice? Will we ever find justice?
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing
Will
"Oh
we
Happy
know
Day."
Justice when we see it. To be and down may I lead the way. Hoping justice will win the day. Listener clues, finding justice where we can. Join us now, we're on the run. Justice is waiting, we'll see it done.
All right. Once again, the lead-in song, of course, which we just recrafted, lied to you because Linda is not here today. Again, she is on assignment. But I am so excited to welcome in Haley Robson. Haley, how are you?
I am doing fantastic.
I would be surprised
How are
if
you?
most of our folks don't recognize you, your name, your connection to the Epstein nightmare, I will call it. And so we appreciate your time. I know we end up getting into elements of the story that may be a little more difficult, but we have so much more to talk about. And you've told that backstory. Let me just get that out of the way. You were raped by Jeffrey Epstein, not trafficked. Am I right about that?
So no, I wasn't raped. I was sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein for 2 years. I was never trafficked or I was never sent to the island.
Okay. And so you never were at the island.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So these days, we're seeing, this story tossed around like a political football, I think, which I find unfortunate. How do you feel about that? We're talking about the Epstein files, which I want to get into in terms of a definition in a second here. But we see one side claiming it's a hoax. That would be the Republicans. That would be Trump. We have another side that seems to be riding it like it's the great white whale. They finally got what they need, and you're almost caught in the middle of that. Does that bother you? Or are you just glad the story is staying alive in the conscience of the public?
I mean, it's bittersweet. It's definitely bittersweet because, as a registered Republican, I'm seeing my party not show up for me. And, it's unfairly becoming a bipartisan issue, which it was never supposed to be. Human trafficking, sexual abuse of children and minors, sexual exploitation. These are real human issues, and it involves the rights of children and women. And it is not supposed to be or meant to be a bipartisan issue. It is a human issue. And to see both sides kind of weaponizing it, it's destroying the survivors, and it's kind of becoming tone deaf at this point because, like you stated, you have the Republicans that are calling it a hoax, which we know it is not a hoax. People don't go to prison for hoaxes. And then you're seeing another side, and I'm looking at this as a non-bias. Just because I'm a Republican doesn't mean that I'm, biased. I am looking at this and coming from a non-biased perspective. And I admire the Democrat Party so much for coming out and supporting us. This was a no-brainer for them. This was a no-brainer, and it should have been a no-brainer for both sides. But also too, feeling as though the Democrats are looking at this as the big white whale to get him out. So it's really hard when you look at intentions. Are you intending to help us and support us because you really truly believe that this is the right thing? Or are you taking advantage of our abuse and our exploitation at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and saying, we're going to politicize this and weaponize this to get this man out and get us what we want for our own agenda. So it's kind of really hard to balance the two.
Yeah, and that was my question. How do you balance that? Because it's almost like being exploited a second time around. And you've got your own story. You're now really the face of a much larger movement. And so when you're approached to speak about what happened and what is now going on, have you ever just said, I got my spidey sense is tingling here that it's that it's not the right purpose or the right platform?
I used to feel that way a couple years ago. There were certain reporters or journalists I refused to work with because I felt like they were trying to exploit our story instead of actually listening and sitting back and absorbing the information that we were giving and trying to get everybody in America and around the world to see it from a non-biased point of view, because a lot of people still aren't up to speed with what grooming and trafficking and coercive control is. And then when they hear about, oh, well, he had money and he paid, it also brings in this taboo conversation revolving around prostitution. And that's not what this is. This is human trafficking at its core. This is exploitation and child abuse at its core. And lately, since the Capitol, I do feel there's more genuine, sincere curiosity and concern for what has happened. And I think as more emails and files become public, I think it's really going to set the tone. And I think a lot of people are going to be dumbfounded with more information. It's going to be groundbreaking because all they're seeing are the faces of women who've been sexually abused and exploited and trafficked. But what I know from Virginia's book and what I know to be in those Epstein files is so much more than just the trafficking and the abuse sexually. It's the coercive control, it's the grooming. In those files, it shows the threats and the intimidation and the surveillancing, and there's so much more than just the actual sexual abuse, which in my opinion and in my story with the smear campaign and everything else following that was just as much or if not worse and more difficult to navigate.
Yeah, you open up a couple of different avenues there. Let me ask you first about the emails. From my reading, there were about 20 some thousand of them released into the committee by the Epstein estate. Three of them now have been released by the Democrats. Now, if I'm the guy trying to make a splash, trying to get attention, trying to expose, I'm going to release the best I've got and as many as I've got. Does it surprise you there are only three, and that and they redacted what apparently was Virginia's name, which seemed odd to me. But there were only three, and what does that tell us about what the rest looks like? Is it we're saving the best for last, or are you seeing the best?
I think it's total chaos. I don't think there is a plan or strategy. I think there is far too much emails and information to come out at once. And I do think it should all come out at once and just rip the Band-Aid off. But I'm starting to understand with the information that is being exposed to the public, I am starting to understand that this is bigger and deeper. And there's so much information and there's so many people that are being implicated, whether complicit or active in the abuse. I'm seeing that as the bigger picture, and it does surprise me the little bit that has come out. But my mind frame and where my head is at is, if this is just the beginning and this is how awful it is, I now understand why there's great lengths to try to resist signing the discharge, because there has got to be some damning information and damning people in those files that are complicit. And that's why, they're going to great lengths to stall and to, resist.
So you think maybe this is even from the Democrats' perspective, and we are apolitical here, Justice Sir TV. We hate politics. We stay away from it. Really, we do. This is a case of criminal activity. That's how we look at it. That's how we explore it. That's how we dig into it. But unfortunately, there is the political overlap. Can't ignore it completely. Do you think that so the Democrats release these three of all of the emails? You think it's the tip of the iceberg scenario?
hmm I think it's more of a tease. I think it's more of, look what we have, and there's more to come. Almost like a warning shot. Like, this is just the beginning. If, we're not going to do, if the Republicans aren't going to do the right thing, this is just a taste of what's in the emails. We're going to release more.
So let's look at it from, and you mentioned, the pressures that seem to ebb and flow. Let's talk about intimidation. We can talk about as recently as yesterday, when Congressperson Boebert had a special meeting. Now, she has been one of the advocates for releasing, and I want to get to this definition very soon, the Epstein files. And she's called into the Situation Room, which is an interesting location, from what I understand, in terms of the history of the Situation Room, and has some sort of conversation with the administration and with Trump. What do you think happened in that room?
Intimidation, threats. I think when we first went to the Capitol, if you can recall, when all of the survivors united with our attorneys back in the beginning of September at the Capitol, one of the questions that I answered was in reference to Trump making the comment of it being a Democratic hoax, and followed by his whole comment of, if you're in the Republican Party and you sign this discharge bill, allegedly he considered it to be a hostile act against the administration. The fact that he said that and now followed up with Boebert in a Situation Room, I don't think there was much. I personally don't think there was much of a conversation. I think it was more of the interaction being, I think she was scolded and reprimanded for going against the Republican Party.
And so, what would you expect to come out of that? I mean, is she going to erase her name from the resolution?
I did hear some rumors that she was thinking about redacting her name from the discharge petition and taking a different road. But this is what I'm gonna say, and it's gonna be heavy for a lot of people. What you are seeing Donald Trump do to his own party is what Jeffrey Epstein did to all the survivors, including the victims. He is using intimidation. He is using coercive control. He is using certain tactics to get the Republican Party to stay on the path of being loyal to him. When in reality, the only thing you need to be royal, the only thing you should be loyal to is what's right and what's wrong, and you stick with your morality. But again, because you're apolitical, and I find myself becoming more apolitical, for me, it's either you're on the right side of this or you're not. Very simple, very
So,
black and white.
and for those who may not understand the machinations of how this works, there's this document. What are they calling it? It's not a resolution. It's a
It's a discharge bill.
discharge bill. So representatives have enough bodies now with the adding of the Arizona representative, whose name I can never remember. It's kind of a tricky name.
Adalita Grajava.
There you go. She was just sworn in yesterday, and if not already signed, she was doing it immediately, as I recall. So that's a done deal. They expect that to happen. There's going to be a vote next week, I believe, right?
That's what I was told, and that's what I've heard, and I can confirm that. Correct.
Okay. And then it would move on to the Senate. Who knows what's going to happen there? And then ultimately to the president's desk. Do you think that it's ever going to be signed if it gets past steps 1, representatives, 2, Senate, 3 gets to the president's desk?
I know for a fact Trump's not signing that. With the way he's been treating the survivors, with the little disrespect, the jabs, calling it a Democratic hoax, the demeanor towards all of the survivors, including our lawyers and our support system, has been atrocious and diabolical from the administration. And so that leads me to believe we're just going to be met with more resistance. However, I think what's more important isn't going to be whether he signs or not, because if he does not sign, he's telling America where he stands.
Yeah,
And it won't be whether you're in the Epstein files or whether you're not, or whether you're complicit or whether you're not, or whether you're an abuser or whether you're not. Because once you refuse to sign off on that, you're already telling America where you stand. And as the leader of the free world and as the president of, America, y- you need to be on the right side of things. And it's really hard for me. And something I don't talk enough about is like the grief I feel for voting for this man and putting him in office. That is something, it's betrayal trauma. I mean, he literally advocated 2024 on his campaign, not just him, Pamela Bondi, Cash Patel, everybody. Oh, I'm going to give you transparency. We're going to release these files, everybody, not just him, his whole entire administration. And then I think it was like June or July after Pam Bondi made the comment of them being on her desk and come to find out that wasn't the truth. Um, yeah, we're seeing a lot of backpedaling. And I definitely have a little bit of remorse for voting the way I voted and believing that this person was going to help us. And it's quite triggering because it brings me back to how I met Jeffrey Epstein and how he made promises. And, we had conversations, and then it was like, God, a flash of light, and he just changed, is what it felt like. And I'm seeing that with President Trump.
Yeah, I would imagine with that background, trust issues is putting it lightly. And so now you're equating that kind of trust issue to the way you voted for Trump, and now what he made it puts him in a horrible position. I don't feel sorry for him; it just puts him in a horrible position where, assuming there's something there he's trying to hide. In the legal world, we call it consciousness of guilt. Why do you care if it's not to protect, not maybe just yourself, but maybe others? But it's still the same smokescreen that just makes it look bad. Okay, so let me talk about that definition that I've never really seen written out. Is what is the Epstein files? What would the materials be if they actually get released?
So Pam Bondi came out and referred to them as the Epstein files. So I call them the Epstein files. I kind
Everybody
of adopted that
does.
definition.
Yes.
So this is where it gets a little cloudy. Allegedly, and I say allegedly because I personally have not seen any photographs or videography, but allegedly, there have been people in the administration and in Congress that have come out and publicly said, "What about all the footage of the videos and images of child pornography and child abuse that was, literally photographed and phototaped?" I personally haven't seen it, but I know I've heard Pam Bondi say that as well of a few members of Congress. Um, I'm assuming the Epstein files would be all the emails that are related or correlated to Epstein's trafficking ring, including emails with Dershowitz, Ghislaine Maxwell, his attorneys. I'm assuming the Epstein files include those children images that are inappropriate, and more than likely nobody will ever get their hands on that because that is child pornography. If you're looking at it as a legal standpoint, there would be no legal way they would be able to release that. And also, it would be all of the depositions, all of the grand jury testimonies. I think the Epstein files is just the umbrella to all of the legal documentation and evidence leading up to his arrest and after his arrest.
And I know that Pam Bondi at some point referenced the child pornography almost as if it's all in that bushel, therefore that's not going to be released regardless. I just don't know what to believe anymore about what it really entails. Is it a list? The mythical list. Is it documents that if you pulled names from it, you'd create a list? I just don't know. Let me ask you, and I'm not asking you to reveal the list, but does Haley have a list?
I mean, my list is probably going to look a lot different, but I want to touch on the list. So there is no list. There is no list. I think what people are mistaken is what Thomas Massey said in the congressional hearing, if you caught that with Cash Patel. He pulled up certain documents out of the files and said to Cash Patel, as he named a few people that were on the list, including 19 other men. I think there's no list, as in like a certified list that you would make for like grocery shopping or like a pedophile sex offender list registry. There's nothing like that in the files. I believe what it is there's men's name, certain people that are named in those files through depositions and through legal documentation that exposes perpetrators that helped Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that is what it is at its core. I think the women that have been trafficked said that they were going to compile their own list, which I have not heard any new information on. And I think that will probably be more the accurate. If they do compile that list, it'll be more accurate. But my list is different. My list is the chef who was in the kitchen preparing food for us in inappropriate clothing. Some of us may have been naked and didn't think to call the police or, I don't know, help us in any, way. And I want to also make it very clear that NDAs, which are non-disclosure agreements, do not cover criminal activity. So whether or not you were a housekeeper or a chef and you signed an NDA, that does not excuse the fact that you watched young children and women coming through that house daily, weekly, monthly, new faces. It does not excuse that you knew what was going on and didn't say anything because you signed an NDA. NDAs don't cover criminal activity. So my list looks more like the 20-year-old man, Tony Figueroa, that recruited me and brought me to Jeffries. My list would be compiled of him, Ghislaine, the chef, the gardener, the manager of the house, the adults that were in the house that saw us, and they had to have known what was going on and did not speak up or protect us or do anything to encourage an investigation.
That seems just so contrary to, I mean, maybe I'm just too Pollyanna-ish. It just seems so contrary to human nature to see something like that taking place and just shut up. Is it money? Is it fear of retaliation? What is it?
All of the above. I think you're dealing with a situation where this person had endless resources. He had endless financial stability. He knew the right people. He was extremely powerful, so powerful that he didn't need to use force. He used coercive control and grooming tactics. This man embezzled so much money throughout his career. This man taught at an all boys school, allegedly with no education in education. So I definitely think it's power, money, status, connections. It's all of the above.
Let's talk about how Jeffrey Epstein's life ended. When you heard that gut reaction,
Oh God. It was a Saturday, I believe. And I think it was before like 11 a.m. And my sister and I don't have the best standing relationship with my family. My sister reached out to me and was like, texting me, I hope that you can find I hope you can find healing knowing that Jeffrey's gone forever. I hope this is the closure that you needed. And when I read that text, I was so dumbfounded because I'm like, what is she talking about? And then Lisa reached out to me and I was in shock. I was in disbelief. I was hysterically crying. I was laughing. It was like just a magnetic field of emotions that rushed over me. And then when I settled down to my emotions, I just sat there like confused and just like baffled. Like, what do we do now?
I want to get to the how he died, but you mentioned Lisa, my wife. Full disclosure for those who haven't heard the story before, she was the director of Filthy Rich on Netflix and the follow-up Ghislaine Maxwell story. And anytime something is in the news, as it is now with those shows go back into the top 10. So for those who don't know the story, first of all, welcome back from your 15-year trip to Mars. But you could check out these Netflix shows to give you a really great foundation about what this is all about. So Jeffrey Epstein, you learn that he dies, and then you start to hear that he killed himself. Is Jeffrey Epstein the kind of guy that would have killed himself?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that for 1 minute. When you deal with a psychopath like Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, psychopath, sociopath, I mean, narcissist to a T, just the most evil person. Um, and he got away with this for decades after there were already complaints being made. For example, Maria Villafarma in 1996 made a complaint, nothing was investigated. And shortly thereafter, in 2004, there was a complaint. There's been several complaints, and there's been nobody that took those complaints seriously to investigate. I don't believe he killed himself. I know that Mark Epstein, his brother, had his own autopsy performed, and I did listen to everything Mark Epstein had to say, and I do believe Mark Epstein, and I do believe his autopsy results are more accurate and more believable. I don't think that Jeffrey was the kind of person that ever thought he would get caught, and I certainly don't think that he had the I don't think that he thought he was gonna go to jail. I don't think he thought he was gonna do time. I don't think he killed himself at
No,
all.
I don't either. And continued full disclosure, Mark Epstein's been on the show a couple of times, and Linda Kenny Baden, who is on assignment, her husband Michael Baden did the autopsy follow up for the Epstein, Mark Epstein family. And so, yeah, I mean, I never from day one believed that he killed himself. And then all of these weird things started coming out about, cameras
Mhm.
not working and guards falling asleep. And I mean, it's really not even a great cover-up story. It's so full of holes. When they released the magic video that they showed of the cell block where you couldn't even see the door where he was being kept, and then there's edits in it. I mean, it's just such just stupid. It's an insult to anybody's intelligence that they would just buy that as, well, this is what had happened, so let's move along. So since we agree that he was killed, who killed him and why?
Oof. You know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities because, and this is just my opinion, when you're running a blackmail operation, because I do think after seeing these emails with Donald Trump involved, I do think that there might have been some blackmailing happening. And I do, as more information comes out, think this was a blackmail operation. That's just my opinion. But those emails coming out with him and Trump and saying that, like, oh, the only dog that hasn't barked has been Epstein, and I'm 75% blah blah blah. Now that comes into my mind as, well, there's motivation right there for him to be killed.
Yeah, and
You're
that
going to
that
start
is
singing
that
people's names.
that's one of the emails. Just to give reference to folks who may not have seen the emails that have been released. So you think that's some sort of specific reference to uh, Epstein's concern over pressure against him, or what might be held against him at some point? What's your interpretation of that again?
My interpretation is that there's going to be more emails with different men who were involved, whether directly involved or complicit by not coming forward and defending us. You're going to see, I believe, more emails like that with different names in it, and then that's going to just showcase that they're obviously Jeffrey was going to do something with it. He said he was 75% done. My interpretation that he had, in some way, at some point in his life, decided that, well, I have this and I have that, and if I go down, I can use that in my benefit.
Gotcha. So basically, 75% of the way to protecting myself, my people, my empire. Okay, so here's a slightly different question. I'm confident, for whatever reason, there are many people that wanted him dead. I'm confident of that. But having the ability to pull it off, as it apparently was pulled off, that narrows the suspect list dramatically. You got to have some major money, control, power, or all of those things.
Hmm. It wouldn't be surprising to me if somebody in power, and when I say somebody in power, I mean somebody above Jeffrey, um, had an inmate take him out. My dad, as a police officer, told me that pedophiles don't make it in prison. They just don't. So Jeffrey, being a high profile and very wealthy person, he could have bought himself security within that prison because of his wealth, and his connections. So it really must have been somebody high up on the totem pole that either ordered his death or did it themselves or somehow navigated and planned that. And again, this is just my opinion, but it to me makes the most logical sense, more so than him killing himself. people with his mind frame, people with that sense of arrogance, they don't kill themselves. They think they're untouchable.
Yeah. No, I have a very difficult time believing, aside from the medical evidence and some of the other questionable information, that he's going to just say, "Well, this is going to be shit compared to what I'm used to. I'll off myself." It makes no
Doesn't
sense.
fit.
So, have you read that report? It was a report done about the whole evening and his death and the comings and goings of everybody. I can't remember the name of the report now. It's about 200-page report. In it, they talk about a couple of the other inmates on that little stretch, and they talk about a person at about 12:30 that night appearing, and you see the back of them in a hoodie on one of the camera shots. I mean, without explanation, without telling us what that is or isn't. It's out there, and even the folks who did the report, it was a government report, seemed to have questions about those events. And yet nobody is willing. They're really just like, no, nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah. And what's crazy is, if I recall correctly, there were two guards that did fall asleep allegedly. And they actually went to court, I believe, and it was either thrown out or dismissed. Um, they were never charged. And I can't, and this goes back to like the cover up. And if it was really a suicide, why wouldn't you be investigating them? If he truly did kill himself, which we know that narrative doesn't fit for his personality, why would you not hold the people who were sleeping accountable? Because what we needed at that time was, we needed Jeffrey to come forward and give us more information. And I think throughout time, if this is really where he was going to end up, I think he would have made a deal and sold certain people out down the river in order to get his freedom back so he can abuse girls, because that is his drug. That's him. That's how he gets his high, by taking control. Tucker Carlson said it best. Tucker Carlson said something to the effect of, he was in a situation having a conversation with, I think it may have been a pastor, but I don't want to quote because I could be wrong, but he had a conversation with somebody, another man. And he said, I just don't understand what the fascination is with the young girls, like braces, childlike. Like, I don't understand what is it? Like, maybe I have too many kids. I don't understand what the fascination was with Jeffrey and that. And he said it perfectly. He said that when he told his pastor this, or his friend, they recited and said, actually, it makes perfect sense, because Jeffrey found glory and power in destroying innocence, in destroying purity. He was obsessed with that, which to me, logically, it makes sense. That's why he went for the younger girls. He wanted to destroy their innocence. He wanted to break them down. And nobody will convince me that he committed suicide. And I do think that now that we're dealing with a new administration, those two people that fell asleep on their job, being fired is not good enough. There should have been a whole investigation for those missing seconds or minutes or however long it was.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I guess whether that ever comes to be or not will be an indication as to who's trying to help and who's not trying to help. Let's talk about Ghislaine. What was your interaction with her?
I didn't know she existed
Yeah.
until years after the investigation. Um, Something I find odd is that Jeffrey kind of kept me at bay. He kind of isolated me from everybody. So I never met Ghislaine. Um, I didn't know who she was until much later in the investigation. And then, obviously learning about her role and the things that she did in being in this false relationship with Jeffrey, or this cover-up relationship. It was, I can't even express. I don't know the right word. I mean, it destroyed me to see a woman who's supposed to be nurturing and loving and protective. It was confusing to me because I've never seen that in a woman before.
And from what we hear, I mean, she used that. That's how she was effective. I'm just one
Hmm.
of you. We're all just women, girls, you can trust me. So how did you feel as that trial was unfolding? Because, vicariously in a weird way, she was Jeffrey Epstein for a lot of folks, and the focus was no longer possible to put on him.
She mirrors Jeffrey. She is his mirror. And we're also finding out that, I mean, it's no news that she's a perjurer and a liar, but obviously through these emails, if you go back and you see the transcripts of her and Todd Blanche's interview compared to the emails, again, that are just being released where she's CC'd in the emails with Jeffrey, talking about Trump and the hit dog and stuff like that. She, which we knew she would, lied to Todd Blanche in that interview. Her relationship with Jeffrey was more in depth, far greater than what she has portrayed it to be. And again, with more emails coming out, we're going to see that. But she is his mirror, and I think the way that her defense attorneys went after the survivors, the minor children, by the way, during trial, it was disgusting and diabolical that these young girls had their entire lives ripped apart from all of their decisions as children. And I don't feel like Ghislaine has been torn apart enough.
Well, she's maybe the contrary. She's getting pretty good treatment these days. So we flash forward, what, 4.5, 5 years of her 20-year sentence. She gets the face-to-face with Todd Blanche from the Attorney General's office. And to what end? What do you think that original 10 hours over 2 days, what was that conversation for? What was the purpose?
My conclusions and opinions change so often because there's all this new information that keeps popping up. And I feel like the best thing a human being can do is become more educated and more aware so they can divert their opinion to fit the narrative. So for me, knowing what I know now, and those emails do make a difference, I wholeheartedly believe that Todd Blanche did not go there for an interview, which is why there was no forensic psychologist present, which is why there were no video cameras or media present, why she didn't come to Washington, D.C. through transport and have to go in front of Congress. Instead, they sent Todd Blanche. I don't think it was an interview. I think it was, what do you know and what can we do for you? There was a deal to be made.
And based on what we've seen after the fact, do you think a deal was made?
Yes. I think she knows more than what she's arguably coming forward with, which omissions are lies. And there's going to be nowhere for her to run and hide when these emails and more documentation comes out to prove that not only are you a liar, but you were just as complicit and involved in the abuse of minor children as Jeffrey was. And I definitely think Todd Blanche went down there with the intentions of finding out what she knew and how he could make it go away.
And almost immediately after that, she's moved to Texas, low, minimum security type facility.
Mhm.
Country club might be the way they describe it, especially compared to a more traditional lockup. That just seems so obvious. It just seems, like we're not hiding anything here.
But that's the whole disrespectful part, and why there's no respect for the survivors, is you as the government are playing in our face. You're playing in our face and you're not committed to the cause. Because when we went to the Capitol and we shook Johnson's hand, we looked at these members of Congress that said, I will support you. I want this released. And then the only people that seem to show up are the Democrats. Yeah, there's a real problem in Washington. There's a real problem from knowing what's right and wrong.
That's definitely true. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, you shook his hand. How tall is that guy?
They're not really tall.
I've just asked. I've never looked him eye to eye. He looks like a short dude. I say as a fellow short dude. Anyway,
I wear heels too, so that could make a difference.
yeah, because you're not short. You're pretty tall, right? How tall are you?
Just under 5'7". So when
Yeah,
I did
so
my press conference with Governor DeSantis 2 years ago, I was like shocked how short he is, with all due respect to him. And I was like, I felt like a giant because I was wearing like 4-inch heels towering over him. I think I stepped on him and I felt so embarrassed.
yeah, that's a
Most of them
moment.
are short, come to find out.
Very interesting. Okay, I got sidetracked there. So now, after her Ms. Maxwell's last appeal failed, she then seeks commutation, which is how it works. You can't seek commutation if you still have appeals floating around pending. So she waits till that's done. Now she seeks commutation, which is basically, Mr. President, can you cut me some slack here and just let me go on the time served? What do you think is going to happen with that?
He's gonna do it. And
Sooner
if
rather
nothing else, it'll be to spite the victims.
Would that happen while he's in office? Would he be that bold?
I don't know.
Or like on the way out the door?
He's pretty reckless, or at least I've seen him become more reckless in the last several months. I mean, I think it's pretty reckless to call an emotional group of women who've been abused a hoax. I think that's kind of reckless. It'll just be interesting if he does. I think he's going to wait for his last year in office.
Yeah. And again, this may be a weird example of it, but that's kind of, what presidents do.
Yeah.
They do all of those nasty things on the way out the door because who gives a shit? What are you going to do to me
Yeah.
now?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying, unfortunately, it isn't
It happens.
rare. Yeah. We talked about Bobert and that sort of intimidation that we think might have happened. Have you personally ever been intimidated, from telling your story, like before you became more public with it?
Mm-hmm.
How'd that all
I
unfold?
had, well, when I had to so when I got away from Jeffrey, he called my house. And because I wouldn't pick up his phone calls, I wouldn't talk to him. He called my house and talked to my dad. And unfortunately, I don't know what that conversation was like because my mom is the one that told me that Jeffrey called the house. And I guess my dad just, from what I've gathered, more so just said, "Don't you ever effing call this house again," and hung up on him. But that just goes to show how ballsy and brazen Jeffrey Epstein was. Nobody could touch him. So, you know, um, yeah, I was intimidated. I've been followed. When I lived in Orlando, I was followed home from my place of employment 2 nights in a row. And I couldn't get their tag number because they were backed into a parking spot. So I don't know who it was.
Hmm.
When I was in Orlando, and I don't want to create conspiracy theories, and it's probably not related, but when I lived in Orlando, my apartment got broken into. Um, I've had threats from UK. I had Federal Reserve friend requested me on Instagram a couple years ago. I had to completely change my Instagram. Yeah. Yeah. And I've also gotten death threats from the public.
Just
Mhm.
random lunatics that are
Crazy.
Yeah, they're out there. What happened? What from the UK? What'd you hear, and from whom? What?
It was some crazy, like, unstable man or guy who called me Ghislaine Maxwell and told me that I deserve to die and burn in hell. And I'm like so confused because I'm like, I'm not Ghislaine Maxwell. But it goes back to the narrative in the very beginning that the corrupted system tried to put out this narrative, and Jeffrey and his attorneys put out this smear campaign, and I was the target. And so it's, to me, of course, people are going to think I'm Ghislaine Maxwell when the media put that out there in the very beginning. So you're feeding the beast.
Yeah,
You want
well,
to talk about political violence? I mean, there should be none of that. It's not political.
yeah. Again, I am. By the way, I'm registered independent, but I'm in the reasonablest party. I'm the only member in the reasonablest party. Nobody else
Moderate.
seems to be reasonable enough to join me in this movement. So it's I just that's why we are so apolitical. It's just you can't beat it. You can't beat that ugly system. So when you talk about the intimidation you went through, obviously you said, screw it, I'm going to be out there, I'm going to be telling my story, I'm going to be supporting those that are similarly situated. We are seeing now, with this latest wave of resurgence of the story, more survivors coming out and saying, yeah, me too, to steal a phrase.
Yes.
Are you surprised at that, encouraged? How do you see that unfolding?
I'm gonna plug my phone in, or my laptop in. Obviously I've been in therapy for 7 years. I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life. I was forced to come out. I wasn't protected by the government as a minor. They threw my name out there in the police reports. So, I was kind of forced into it. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't given that. Um, and I think it was after just being bullied and not coming forward, I got sick and tired of the world trying to tell me who I was. And of course, coming out and things like that, it's been great, but it's been very hard. And now that I have my survivor sisters, I feel stronger and more confident, less fearful. I feel like honored to fight with them. And I think I feel more safe knowing that when you come after me, you're not just coming after me, you're coming after all of us. And I don't stand alone anymore. And I think that's probably been the silver lining that's kept me going, is seeing all these women who are, oh gosh, coming out with their stories. They're so inspiring. And I'm so grateful that I have those reinforcements. I have somebody beside me that I don't have to fight these battles alone anymore.
Yeah, it had to be incredibly lonely and detached to be the only one orbiting out there. Now the universe is starting to get more packed, and a lot of it's because of you, because you're out there telling your truth, telling folks what happened. And so people are, women are like, I gotta say something. I have to. And as they see more and more of the case unfold, they get more emboldened to do that, and they see, kind of feeds on itself. Then they see more people joining you, and then they feel stronger as well, so they're going to come forward. Have you
Mhm.
heard any stories that even surprised you based on everything you know?
Yes, a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. Anuska DeGiorgio's story was cringe worthy. Ugh, that one was hard. Virginia Gouffre, I can't even read her book because I'm so devastated for her. And I actually recently just finally sat down and watched Filthy Rich and was
Really?
able to watch Courtney Wild and Virginia Gouffre's story through and through. And I haven't been able to do that up until this point. Um, and you know what else is funny? It's not funny, I'm sorry. It's ironic. As a mom and living in the small area of Palm Beach County, you think that there's all these victims that have come out and publicly spoken. There are so many, Michael, that have not come out and are still quiet. I believe this or not, 2 weeks ago on TikTok, I had a mom, she's a mom friend. Our kids played together. They went to the same elementary school. She knew about Jeffrey Epstein. She knew about my abuse. Like, she knew I was public. She messaged me like 2 weeks ago and told me I am the second person that now knows that she was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. She was brought to his house by Tony Figueroa, the same guy that recruited me. And I asked her, well, why now? Like, why now? Like, do you want to go public? Like, I can get platforms for you. I can get you in touch with an attorney. Is this something? And she just said, no. I never want to revisit it. I don't want to count it. She goes, my ex-husband's the only person that knows. She's like, I don't have the courage and I don't have the strength to find it to bring it up. So there's a lot. you see all these women coming together. Now think about all the ones that are still left out there in the cold that are scared. Their families don't know. They've never been to therapy. They've just buried it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can understand that too. It takes a very strong person to rise above that. If after years they've finally, on a day-to-day basis been able to function, it's still there, but they've overcome it. They're basically saying, do I want to relive that? Do I want to bring that back to the surface? And how does that change, my family, my community? It takes some strength. It's unbelievable. Have you seen in the encounters that you've had, and I hate to even ask this question because it's just such a smack on humanity, that people pretend or they're trying to glom on to whatever this movement might be, and they're just lying? Have you ever
Yeah.
sensed that or proven it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I've talked to my therapist and I've also talked to my attorneys, and that's something that's been discussed is the fact that I'm going to share a story with you. This is a perfect example. I had a girl on Instagram after the Capitol. I had a girl on Instagram, pretty girl, claimed to have grown up in Royal Palm. Um, Told me that she was abused by Jeffrey. Her story didn't make any sense though. It didn't really fit the abuse narrative that we've all shared. And really all of our stories start the same in some degree. So I kind of already felt like something was off with her story because it wasn't the normal. And you have to vet these people. When they come up with some type of allegation, you have to vet them because there's, to my knowledge and what I've learned, a lot of people out there that have called, especially during the lawsuits, pretending to have been abused by Jeffrey to either get attention by being public or to get financial gain and abuse the system. And it's so, people like that make it so hard to believe us and to trust our stories because those people are the type of people that believe the Me Too movement is just a movement. But this isn't a movement. This is reality for us. This is a life. These are real stories that affected real women.
Yeah, it's a different kind of sick.
Yeah.
Just to either want notoriety or maybe somehow, I mean, at least money is a more normal evil. People like to get money however they can. Hey, if I can glom onto this movement and get a few bucks, good for me. I'm a grifter. But those that might be doing it because it's they want the attention or they want to be part of something. It's just they need some help. They need some mental
Yeah.
help.
Agreed.
So moving forward, what to you is the perfect scenario from this day forward in this case?
The perfect scenario. Oh boy. Um, hmm. We're going to the Capitol on Tuesday, the 18th of November at 9 a.m. We're holding a press conference. Ideally, in the perfect scenario, in the perfect world, um, I would love to see more Republicans join the discharge petition and sign and be on the right side of things, in an astronomical amount of support for us. I would like to see more stand up to Trump. And if you're going to ask children, and I say children because we were children when you saw us speaking at the Capitol, we were not adults. We were speaking on behalf of our child self that was abused. If we as children can grow into the adults that we needed to protect ourselves, and we can put our life at stake and go against the system, knowing that there's going to be consequences, I implore every member of Congress and I implore our president to step forward and to end all of this by showing support and coming in with solidarity for all of us and showing not just us, but the American people what it looks like to have justice and to allow the American people to feel that the justice system does work, and we can reinstill faith into our government, into the DOJ, into the judges, the system in general. And in a perfect world, I would love to see Trump finally acknowledge us and the Republican Party to collectively show up for us in solidarity.
Well, you
But
are go ahead, finish, please.
but I don't foresee that, because there are people in the system that will be dramatically affected in a negative way. So it's just going to keep costing us our peace and our healing. And to expect children to put a brave face on and to come forward and to face the evil that we faced at such a young age, to expect us to do so, which we have, and then have the adults be terrified, it just doesn't make sense. If you're expecting the children to show up, we need the adults to show up too, to support us and to have our backs.
That yeah, it's well said, and because of you, I believe we're at the point we are now, and you should be proud of what you've been able to do, willing to do, had the guts to do. And for those who see you, whenever they see you, I think they draw strength from that, and hopefully that helps the bigger problem become resolved, exposed. Because I think that's the most frustrating thing right now, and it must be for you guys that the truth is not out there.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, whatever
No.
somebody thinks that truth might be, it's not out there.
And I
So,
don't know if we will ever have the full truth, because we have seen so much resistance from our government. So, it may take another 20 years. It may take another 30. I mean, I could be dead before I see, I could die of old age and be dead before I see any type of justice. But, as a collective, we have to stay focused and stay on path of what we're doing right now. And, like I keep saying, there's power in numbers. If we stick together and we show up together, there's no room for cracks. They will eventually be forced to hear us and see us if they haven't already.
well, we will continue to follow this, of course. Next week, you'll be in Washington, a big showing we expect. That'll be on, is that Tuesday? Is that right? It's going to be on Tuesday?
Tuesday, November 18th at 9 a.m. will be the press conference. And I believe it's Thomas Massey, Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay. And then obviously moving toward passage in the House, passage in the Senate, plopped on the desk of the president. However it ends, the level of awareness is, I think, as high as it's ever been, which you must be happy about. And again, I think you're a key part of that whole process. So thank you so much, Haley. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So we'll be keeping an eye on this as it unfolds, continues through into early next week and beyond. So thank you for joining us. Very important story. I'm Michael Bryant. This is Justice Served TV. Hey, please try to do the right